Okay, let's talk some more about this Quadrajet. And we were talking about the secondary side of this, so let's expand on that discussion a little bit. Where there's this holly over here, I guess it was telling you, see there's no air doors on this. It's just a straight shot down into the secondaries. When that secondary side opens up, you know, there it comes, and that's how it meters it. Secondary. It's got a vacuum. This is a vacuum secondary. That means it has a vacuum chamber here. So when you punch it and the vacuum goes away, it's got a spring in there that lets that secondary side there open up. There's no direct connection on it. You can get a mechanical secondary holly, which mechanically opens up the secondary side back here, but they're not that good for street use. So anyway, we were talking about this Quadrajet. Now, like I said in the end of the last video, these are a variable CFM carburetor. That means you can run it around, you know, on a 305, a small V8, and you know, it'll work good. And then you can plop it on a bigger engine, and it should still run very good. And it's gonna, you know, it's only ingest as much air as it needs, but you got the capacity to go from hardly needing any of the secondary side on a real small engine to needing most of it. So you've got up to 750, and if you get an 800 CFM version, you got up to 800 CFM. That's just the same as a thermoquad. So, you know, it just astounds me that people don't think more of that idea. That's an excellent idea. I mean, it just is. It's an excellent idea for a carburetor. You know, instead of you having to go out here and keep buying carburetors as you build a hotter and hotter engine, you just stick with the same one. You do a little bit of tuning on it, and that's what we'll look at here. Is like, well, you know, if you got tuned for a 305, how are you going to get more fuel into it on the secondary side? Say it's pulling the doors open, so you can get more fuel into it. Well, that's what this little guy is. You got this little hanger here, and I'm going to take this screw out. And this is how you change the secondary rods on a Quadrajet. Pull that screw out. Make sure not to lose it. You simply lift this up. And these are your secondary rods. If I can do it without dropping it. And you notice the shape of these rods on the end. Let me quit swinging here. You notice how they taper and they get thin at the tip. Well, what happens is when this, I showed you on the last video, when these doors open up and you drop one like that. When these doors open up, you see this little cam here. It raises that hanger up because that hanger's mounted to it, and so it pulls these up. So these things, there's a couple orifices in the bottom of this carburetor on the secondary side back there. And it simply sources fuel from the fuel bottle and comes up through those orifices, and then it comes back over out of these discharge ports right here. And actually, that's the tip end. The discharge ports are right there. These big tubes right there. So that's how the secondary side fuel flows on these. And this is what controls how much fuel comes through these secondary rods here. So what you do is, so you've got a set of rods in the back of this thing that are good for the 305. You know, it's not that big of an engine. You need a leaner rod, which means this tip is going to be thicker. That's called the power tip there, that little thin part of it. You see it tapers on down here. Let's see if I can get a better shot of that. Let's try this. You see it tapers down there, but that taper, that's what, you know, that's what determines your fuel flow. And tends to be a lot of confusion about the secondary side of one of these Quadrajets, and guys do some things that are not right. They screw around with the secondary side of this, and they don't really know what they're doing. And they, you know, the first thing to do is they tend to, well, I'll tell you what the first thing guys do on these things. I don't know, I say guys, maybe there's women that do it too, but I ain't never heard of it. First thing that people, backyard mechanics always do, or they used to in the old days, before we started trying to educate them differently, is they immediately took off this rod right here because they figured out that this thing is pulled in by vacuum when the engine runs. So what happens here is when that thing, it holds this door from opening. So, you know, and this thing doesn't, you know, you see it doesn't pull back out. Just, it doesn't spring right back out. It's got a little bit of a delay in it, but guys, in their infinite backyard knowledge, they determined that this rod needed to come off, or we needed to quit this thing from interacting with the secondary door operation. You know, that was the first mistake they do. I've preached this and preached this and preached this, that this is here for a reason. You know, when these are even in place on the old carburetors, like the old 60s models Quadrajets, and 70 and 71, 72. So, you know, here's the thing that you guys need to discard about these carburetors, this myth, and wrap your head around and understand that this is not something to limit the potential of this carburetor. It's only because that, you know, these were factory equipment carburetors, and when you take this thing off, then these doors sometimes, just by their design, and then maybe it's, you know, it's just, sometimes you have some design parameters that you have to work around, and the air door design that sometimes you may get turbulence or something like that when they open up. They may flutter a little bit of harmonics going on, but you know, GM didn't want people coming back and complaining that they had a bog on the secondary side, because what happens is, you know, if you screw around with the secondary side and you get this thing too loose and you take this off, this damper off of it, it's called dampener actually. It's easy to mess that up. I had somebody correct me one time. But dampener, this is actually, it's a pull-off, but it's also a secondary air door dampener. But when you take that thing off, then these things tend to come open a little bit faster than they should. And then what happens is they reach their spring pressure, and then they bounce back down again. And when they bounce back down, then it loses it. You know, when this is pulling this up, like I showed you, when these rods are pulling out, then you got all this crap going on with these rods. You know, you got, if I can make this so it's understandable, instead of it smoothly opening up and progressing, then you have this fluttering action and bouncing around and things like that. So your secondary metering rods are coming up and permit fuel, then they're bouncing back down and cutting the fuel down, and they're bouncing back up again. So you got all this crap going off. So the secondary side of the carburetor is getting fuel sent and cut off, sent, cut off, sent, cut off, and that's what causes that crap, you know. And you know, guys, before we started educating people about these things, you know, they couldn't understand why that was happening. Well, I took that thing off there, it shouldn't be bogging like that. No, you caused the bog. You just caused it by taking that thing off, or having one of these is no good anymore. Believe me, you guys are not Rochester engineers. I'm not either. So that's the first thing to do. And then there's an adjustment on these that you can loosen the tension up on these springs here, and that's the next thing they did, because here's one of the other, and I'm going to say this, but dumb things that guys do with these Quadrajets that mess them up. And that is, you know, they think that these doors have to be adjusted, so if you just blow on them, these doors will come flying wide open, because how that happened is you had some guy probably that got out there, and he's got one of these carburetors on a stock 350, and that thing may flow, it may flow 550 CFM max to the floor. Well, when that happens, these doors are not going to open all the way up. They may open up halfway or a little bit past that. That's about halfway right there. See that? So they open about halfway, and that's it. They're not going to open. But he's convinced, so in his infinite knowledge of carburation, he's convinced that these doors have to open all the way, or he's not getting all that airflow. That's not the way it works, guys. When these carburetors are designed, when they're adjusted correctly, and you've got the secondary side set up the right way and adjust spring tension adjusted and all that going like it should be, they rarely are ever going to open all the way up. So get over that. Get past that. Get past that guy thing of having these things open all the way up, because they rarely ever going to do that. You'd have to have this probably on you'd probably have to have this thing on a big block like a 455 or a built 455, something like that, to ever see them open all the way. That's just the way it is. So it's an excellent design. It is an excellent design. It is an excellent design until people frig with it and get them messed up. You know, they start messing with those air doors and taking all that off and getting them out of whack and out of adjustment, and they think that they got to put the thinnest rods in here, because there's a big selection of these rods. This one's kind of middle of the road. This is a CV rod, and I probably won't ever be able to show you this on camera because it's so small, but right there, yeah, you can barely see it right there by fingertip. You see there's a couple letters stamped into that. That's how you determine which rod you have, and you always have a pair of the same things. These are two CV rods right here. You don't ever put two different rods in a carburetor. So they start putting two thinner rods in them, and it messes them up. That's why they no longer work right, and then they throw their hands up. Well, I don't know why it doesn't work right anymore. Well, that's why I'm here, and the other guys that know Mr. Heavy Chevy. That's why we're here, to try to get this stuff turned, reversed, and so this mythology and these mistakes that have been made through the years. And you know, these carburetors, like I said, have got such a bad rap because you have people's family members that messed them up. They messed them up in the 70s, and then some of them messed them up in the 80s. So all this crap's been passed down. And now you got guys these days that still say the same thing. They say, well, you know, my dad or my uncle he hated them, and he never had good luck with them, and so on and so forth. And I've driven many cars and trucks with these carburetors on, and I can tell you when they're not frigged up, meaning that you got a clean carburetor and you got the choke working like it should, and you got the secondary side working like it should, and you've got it all working like it should, they are a nice carburetor. I mean, they start every time. They start easy, hot, cold, and you know, and it's not saying a Hollywood neither, but you know, for a factory carb, it's a very good carburetor. And it's just a lot of misinformation been passed down. A lot of things, you know, there's a lot to correct on these carburetors as far as misinformation. So, you know, and a lot of you guys write to me, and I'm sure glad to hear from you. And I try to help each of you out as much as I can. But you write to me and you've got something going on. You got one of these that's not, you think it's not working right or something like that. In some cases, they're probably not. But here's the thing: when you have a carburetor that's, you know, at least 25 years old, 35 years old, whatever, and, you know, it's doing something a little funny, you know, you probably do for a rebuild. I've seen these carburetors running, and they've got a quarter inch of crud all over them, no air cleaner, fuel line hacked like that one is, you know, stuff missing, vacuum line's not routed the right way, or old or split, you know, we got all this crap going on. So first thing I tell you guys, if you got a carburetor, well, let me back up. First thing you do before you condemn a carburetor is you need to check your engine and make sure that you got the timing set right, that the thing's in, you know, that's actually in tune, you know, because if you're trying to get an old engine that's got low compression in one or two cylinders and is burning oil, or it's got a worn out cam or worn out timing chain or worn out distributor, some crap like that going on, and you're trying to get it to run right, and you're blaming the carburetor, it may not be the carburetor. So get that stuff squared away first. Make sure you got a healthy engine, and then look at the carburetor. And then the first thing you do, if it looks like it's not been rebuilt, rebuild it, because it's not hard to rebuild. I'm going to do another video of rebuilding a Quadrajet, and it's simple to do. You just need a solution to soak it in, and get something to soak it in, and a good place to work. And I recommend a source of compressed air, and that's about all you need, plus the kit. It can be done easily. So anyway, guys, like I said, I hope these videos, like I said, it was not a bash session for Hollies or Edelbrocks. You know, they have their place. I have nothing against them, and like I said, I actually am going to use that one on my Plymouth in there. So I do use them, but I'm just trying to keep people from getting, as some of the people down here say, frustrated with these Quadrajets, or being afraid of them, or intimidated by them, and just deciding for themselves that they're not about to work on one. Because I have next to never seen a Quadrajet that cannot be rebuilt and got working again, working well. So I hope you will give it your best shot. Try to learn about these and take the information that I've presented in these videos and learn and discover what an awesome carburetor they are. Because for a street-driven vehicle, like a normal car, truck, or even a hot rod of some sort, you know, it's hard to beat one of these. They sound good and they run good. They're about as fuel efficient as any kind of older carburetor like this can possibly be because of those small primaries. And yes, you can fix the choke on these and they will actually start easy on a very cold morning without all that gas pumping. So let's put away all our mythology and our legends and our misinformation and get these things rebuilt and adjusted and that kind of thing, and enjoy the heck out of them. So, alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in another video. Have a good one.